Hello, Ergu. So this is going to be the video for day 2, John 3, 1 through 21. The first question that I looked up was the things that stood out to me, and two things stood out to me. One is that in general, when Jesus says the word truly, truly, it's like an emphasis, like pay extra attention to what I'm about to tell you. It's a marker, right? It's like me saying, listen very closely to what I'm about to say. It's showing us that he's saying something very important. And I'm saying he says that more than once in that passage, so this is obviously a very important passage for us to understand and to know. And the second thing I thought was really interesting was that Nicodemus came at night, where he was trying to be hidden, right? He wasn't trying to make it obvious in public that he was going and talking to Jesus, because the Pharisees at the time, they didn't like him. And so I think it's very interesting that he was hidden when he came, that he didn't obviously want to be associated with Jesus. And I just think that's really interesting. The other question that I answered is how this passage points us to the gospel. And I got a couple different things out of here. In verse 14, Jesus says, the Son of Man must be lifted up. And what he's referring to here is Jesus being put up on the cross. He's lifted up. And so Jesus knows he's going to the cross to die. He knows what his purpose is and his mission is. It wasn't a surprise to him that he had to come die for our sins. And then John 3:16 is one of the most well-known verses in the Bible. That would be a great one to go memorize. And just really shows the love of God and what he's done for us. I like verse 17, how it's saying that God came to save people. He didn't come to be this cruel judge or a cruel God coming down just to strike people where they stand when they rebel against him. No, he came down to save people. I also think it's very interesting in verse 19, how it's saying that unsaved people or non-Christians love their sin, and the secrecy that they have, right? They don't want their deeds exposed, and because of that, they hate the gospel. Because what the gospel does is it lets us see how sinful we really are, right? Like if you didn't know anything about God, anything about the Bible, you could say, hey, I'm fine, I'm a good person. But the Bible tells us that there are no good people, and people don't like that thought. It's discomforting. And so they hate the gospel and they hate the light because they don't want to see that they aren't as good as they think they are. And I think it's super interesting, verse 21, where at the very end where it says that it may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. And I think that's really interesting, just in God right there. Because as Christians, we are commanded to go do good works. But where do we get the power to go do that good works? Like, I'm not strong enough or smart enough or intelligent enough to just do good on my own. Even the good works that we do, we get from the strength of God. And that's super comforting because I'm not a perfect person. I'm a very deeply flawed person. But God isn't. And so that I'm able to rely on his strength, even in good works, is just very comforting for me. But I'm interested to see what you got out of the passage. I'd love to know.